Howdy. Have you ever woke up with breath so bad you could chew it? Anyway, that's the thought for the day. And I didn't have the camera on myself, so I ruined my corny joke anyway. Anyway, I'm Charles Daring. This is Scrolling with Charlie. And y'all probably heard that a couple times. So I'm just going to go right into roll call. We're going to start out with Bill Heitman. Bill, tell everybody about yourself and where you're from, where you can be found, and all that. Don't forget to unmute. There you go.
Bill Heitman. Nickname is Sawdust Bill. Phoenix, Arizona. Been scrolling for about 17 years. Had the pleasure of meeting Rick and judging contests with him and doing a lot of the scroll saw picnics back on the East Coast. And I have a nice little shop out in the garage, and I do test cuts for Sumai.
All right, Sumai is a designer out of South Africa. Thank you very much, Bill. We can move on over to Dan Molesky. Tell everybody where you're at and how they can find you if you're still there. There you are.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana. I don't have any web presence. I'm learning. I'm using scroll saw to enhance some other projects I do.
Good deal. Is there any other social media you'd like to let people know where to find you if they'd like to?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook under Dan Paddles River Valley. I hate to not use my real name, but I'm kind of job hunting. And
I hear you. Yeah, don't want to be tracked down for dirty jokes and stuff. Not that he would. In his defense, he's hireable. I've hired him 3 times. Thank you, Dan. Next we have Smiling John Cousins, and I'll let him introduce the rest, or talk about himself. You know what I mean? You've done this.
You guys do it once or twice. Hi, I'm John Cousins. I can be found on Facebook under my name, John P.A. Cousins. Got a Facebook page. Would if I could scroll saw work. Scrolling for, geez, I don't know, probably 5 years now. Prefer spirals over straights, but that's my own opinion anyway. So that's about it.
Alrighty, thank you very much. I don't know why I did it that way. Anyway, next we're going to go over to New York for John Schaffner over there.
Yes, from New York. John Schaffner, Canastota, New York, which is right in the hub of this, right in the middle of the state. Been scrolling for, well, since the mid-'80s anyway. And the only thing I have is my Facebook under my name, and maybe someday I'll get around to produce videos and put up on YouTube. But not looking very likely right at the moment.
Well, dang it. We'll be looking forward to it. We just had Donald, somebody or another, join us. Hopefully he has a webcam and mic. I'm not sure. Now we're going to move on to a man that's known for scrolling naked. This is Mark Stallings. Tell everybody about yourself.
My name is Mark Stallings. You can find me on Spiritual Splinters. I'm on Facebook. You can also find me on Facebook under Mark Stallings. I've been scrolling now for about 4 months. Been doing other woodworking. I'm the resident comedian. I like to pick on Charlie, so here you go, Charlie. This is just for you.
Yeah, and because of him, we're all in therapy. I'm going to skip you, Rick, since you're going to be doing the first tutorial, then I'll come back to you, sir. We have our co-host, Mr. Russell Claridy, with a special guest with him. And we've talked in the past about whether or not you've taught people to scroll, and I'll let him say the rest.
Hi, I'm Russ. Been scrolling for about 30 years. I'm on other woodworking things. You can reach me on Simply Wooden Creations on Facebook, www.simplywoodencreations.com, or on YouTube under Simply Wooden Creations. And yeah, we had discussed about if we ever taught anybody, and yes, I have throughout the years. And I'd like to introduce my granddaughter, Michaela Ring. I taught her how to scroll a few years back, and I'm very proud to say that she not only learned how to scroll from me, but she went on. She has obtained her own scroll saw and set up her own little shop inside of her dad's little shop, I guess you would say. And she's scrolling on her own.
Rock and roll.
You want to say hi, Michaela?
Hey, I'm Michaela.
What kind of scroll saw do you have, Michaela?
She says, I don't know.
what color is it?
It's a pinned in blade, just Craftsman. She got it for like $40 off at
Craigslist.
Yeah, it's it was just something she decided she wanted to do on her own, and her mother went out and bought her a magnifying light. And what else did you get?
I got wood paint, and I got the blades and all that.
So she could
go ahead.
So that she could just start on her own. So we were just talking tonight, and I didn't realize her saw used only pin blades. I thought it was pinless, but since I realized it didn't, I pulled out my old saw that I used to have, and she's going to take it home tonight because it does use pinless blades, straight in blades, and I'll give her some more blades and stuff. It's a good feeling. I mean, it's fantastic. She used to come over in the afternoons after school. Her mother and father worked, and she said that she didn't want to be. I mean, she's here, so she could acknowledge this. She said she didn't want to be at home alone, so I used to invite her over here and scrolling. She goes, I would like to try that, and I said, well, here. Set her down, went inside, printed out a few patterns that I made her that were really easy to do, and she started cutting them out, and so here you have it.
The rest is history.
Yeah, she even went on to do it on her own. She loves it.
Awesome. I think for a beginner, a pen blade could be good because of the stability of those pens holding it in place, until you get to the hang of scrolling. So that's not a bad thing. But again, I'll get to you, Rick, in just a sec. My name is Charles Deering. For anybody that hadn't ever seen the show, I'm sorry that you resorted to this. On YouTube, I'm Charles Deering Scroll, and Facebook, I'm The Charles Deering, and that's all of the places I really give a crap about, except for Google Plus. I think I'm still Charles Deering there. But we're going to move on over to Rick Hutcheson because he's going to be doing a inlay tutorial via video, and he'll be narrating the video. And we're looking forward to that because, yes, for those that didn't know, inlay can be done with a scroll saw, and Rick's going to show and tell us how. Take it away, Mr. Rick.
Okay. Got to get this screen share thing going here. However it works. Okay, come on, thing. Alright, now what am I not doing that's supposed to be good?
You got to choose the upper left option of share full screen.
I did, I thought.
No, right now we're all just on an acid trip, I think. Now there's your desktop, so we're getting there.
Okay. Oh, we got that. Okay. So, here's the video. Oh, let's get it enlarged here. Okay, we're going to start out with 3 different colors of video. And then we want to shut the volume off, you said. We're starting out with 3 different kinds of wood and the pattern of the wolf inlay. And I kind of lay it out as to about how it's going to go. And then from there, I pick the wood that I'm going to use as the background. And I kind of mark where the pattern's going to go at on the wood so that I know where the rest of the parts are going to go as I put them on. As you can see, I'm laying it out and saying, okay, up in that area, I'm going to put that on the lighter colored wood to make the moon of this wolf picture. As you see, I got a pull-out drawer there right below my table to spray glue on. It's just some hardware cloth. Spray it on, then you can shove the drawer back in. It's out of the way. You always have a place to spray and take care of the overspray. Glue the pattern on. Now on this one, I'm nailing the patterns on. I just start out with the nails, and then I'll switch to a different method here in a little bit. But I'll put the nails up in the waste wood, and as you saw where I set the circle down, it was kind of up. here's what I'm talking about. I used the steel plate. That was the top of where the picture's going to be. See, so I'm getting the moon kind of set down in there. And I just hammer down until the nails hit the plate or even bend. And then, as I'll show you on the back, you know that the nails are peened over and there's nothing there to scratch the table. So that works out pretty good for me on most of my patterns. The big thing is I've got to keep some scrap on that walnut seat to have a place to nail into. And then once the pattern's on there, I'm kind of marking again where my scrap is so that I know where I can do my test cuts at. I know that area up in there is scrap. And I think I whacked the board off here in a second so that I can get to that area. And this is on the Q3 scroll saw, my favorite saw. And we're going to tilt the table a little bit. You actually tilt it around 3 degrees, but then it's trial and error from there. And I just start cutting these little teardrops and checking those to see the fit. And as you can see, let's see on this one, all right, it goes clear through. So I've got the table too straight. So I need to tilt the table more now to get it to catch. Just think about a straight up and down cut, you know it's going to fall out, and so the more it's tilted, the tighter it's going to get. So we just, you work back and forth. Sometimes you can get it pretty good on the first, second, third try, and other times you'll cut quite a few. And see, I just keep going into the scrap wood wherever I've got room in the scrap to make these test cuts. And is what we're going for on this one is we're trying to get the cut, the maple on top to drop down even into the walnut. There I kind of missed the camera, but I think I'm pretty close there. So I think that's the one I'm going to go with. Now, okay, so now that was one way to do it, was with the nails. Now we're going to go to a different method and use double-face carpet tape. So we get another pattern out, and this pattern I just drew up in Corel Draw. I just went and found, went internet and found wolf patterns or clip art and pulled one off and come up with the wolf, and then the background square and the moon I just drew in Corel. But same thing, we're going to lay a pattern up there and kind of see that it goes about that high. And then we're going to use the white wood again for the moon. And get our spray glue out. And we're going to glue that moon down. This spray drawer is just so handy. I came up with that years ago. I used to look for boxes and everywhere else, or spray over the table, and everything in the shop would be sticky. And I finally come up with this drawer idea. There the pattern kind of slipped on me as I was sticking it down, so I'm going to pull it back over to the side. Just because there's no real reason to have to pull it over the side. Now I want to go ahead and just cut that chunk off so that I've got a smaller piece. And so that's the moon pattern that's going to go on there. And now I need to set the side width of my pattern, and so I pretty well got it there. Now I use the cheap double-face carpet tape, the real thin plastic stuff. The thicker you get, it's going to start affecting the distance between the two boards and start causing you some problems. So the real thin stuff is probably the best to use. Now here I'm trying to get this stupid tape off the back of that carpet tape. The other, just paper, I hate getting that paper started. But once you get it off, it goes pretty easy. And now we'll just stick that up here in the corner, you know, where area I want it in. And as you can see, the wolf will go on there. And we know the wolf is going to overlay, so that's kind of a waste area there. I say waste area because I'm going to cut that out again into that moon. So we can take our drill. I use a Fordham tool with the drill chuck on it, and then I've got a board, yeah, you can see it there to the right, laying on a table that I usually drill on, but this one I just held the board up and drilled through. You can drill through at an angle or drill through straight. Either way, it'll kind of go. Now, as you can see, we've got the table tilted down to the right, and we know that the top of that moon is going to be the biggest part, so that means we have to feed in clockwise, counterclockwise around the moon to keep it on the right side of the blade. Now here again, I'm going to go in, and I know that that's waste area, and we're going to do some test cuts. You always want to do the test cuts with the actual wood that you're going to use, because different woods may vary different. How sharp your blade is may make a variance on it and stuff. And I think I must be pretty close there. Yeah, I'm pretty close there, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now, normally I use the same thickness as a wood, but you don't really have to. As you can see on the one we'll do here after a bit, on the raised one, you know, different thicknesses of wood would be all right. So feed the blade in through, and you bottom feed on the Q3. And again, make sure that the pattern or the moon is to the right so that it bevels down to the bottom. And then we'll just start cutting around that moon. And I just kind of, this is a number 2 reverse blade that I'm using. Like I say, I don't use the spirals. I use the reverse tooth blades on it. And, you know, we just kind of follow that line right around. And I'm trying to hurry a little bit, but that's pretty much my normal scrolling speed, I guess you could say. And then once we get around there and get that cut off, we'll take it off the blade. And then we can separate all the parts and see how it fits. And as you can kind of see there in a few places, the maple actually had some rough edges on the back, see, so it's a little bit thinner there in places, but for what I'm doing, it doesn't make much difference because it's going to be on the back. Get that carpet tape off, and I haven't found that the carpet tape really leaves any residue to worry about cleaning up, but we just get it all off. And now my moon should fit down in there if I turn it in the right direction. There we go. And it should be pretty flush. Now, actually, I would normally go in and glue this in now, but for this example, I didn't even glue it. I didn't want to take the time. So now we're going to worry about getting our wolf pattern on, and that's going to go on the walnuts so that I've got a darker pattern for the wolf in the walnut. And again, I'm going to set it off to the side so I've got some scrap out there, hopefully. And I think I'm going to go ahead and lay my pattern up again to see how much scrap I've got. I think I do. No, maybe I don't. And again, back with that double face carpet tape. And wrong knife. That one's a knife I basically made for cutting formica, and then I use it for prying apart the carpet tape boards and stuff. But anyway, back again to fighting this paper to come off of there. And I'll get it here in a minute. It's just one of those, one time it works good, one time it doesn't. But I found that just trying to get under the corner like that with a knife usually works the best. And we'll set the wolf in there in about the area that it can go in. And so we've got our backing on and our wolf, and now we're going to cut the wolf out. And again, we're still using the number 2 reverse blade, and make sure that the wolf is to the right of the blade so that the top of the wolf is the thickest part of it. And then we just take the scroll saw and we run around the wolf. I could have probably cut a lot of this out on cutting this wolf, but you know, it's kind of, you get started and then go and edit and don't know where to go to next. But maybe you could cut it quicker with the spiral blade, not having to turn the wolf, but I don't feel you're going to have the smooth edge cut like you need to get the inlay to fit properly. So I like using the straight blades on it. But we get down here and we're going to have this wolf cut out, and then the wolf should drop right in just like the moon did. But the wolf is also going to be in the moon, and there's part of the moon there that was the scrap we cut out of it, and it fell out basically because I didn't glue the moon in first. So if you glued the moon in, that wouldn't have come out with it. And again, my moon stuck to the tape. But now the moon should fit back in place, and then the wolf should fit right in. And if you set your table angle right, everything should fit pretty flush. Now there, see, it's where my thumb is, it's kind of stretched out a little bit because I've got the moon shoved in too far. But that's kind of the way we cut that part. Now we'll put the frame pattern or the backing pattern on. And again, I would normally try to glue that wolf and the moon and everything in so I've got one solid board. We'll tilt the table back to 90 degrees and start in on it again. And we'll just cut around the outside of that frame. And when we get done, I'll have it all framed and ready to go as a finished project. And I know straight lines is the one everybody hates cutting, but to me, I find that one of the easiest things to cut on the scroll saw is straight lines going down the sides of these frames. It's just a matter of lining up the wood and the line and the blade and then just push. And the blade has no choice. As long as you're pushing the wood in a straight line, the blade is going to cut in a straight line. So it's a pretty easy no-brainer for me. And now we're getting around there to the end, and we'll make sure we get the nub taken off. And now we should have a completed project there with the wolf. And now I do go ahead and glue it together and put some spray varnish on it. And when I got done, it looked like that. So let me stop and ask questions here, get back to the chat. Where am I at? There. So I got to get off a screen share. Okay, any questions on that?
I've got a question. You said you were cutting counterclockwise?
Yeah.
It looks like you're spinning it actually clockwise. Well, does that make a big difference, or?
Well, it makes it. You've got to have your saved piece of wood on the lower side of the table. Now, some tables will tilt right and left, so you can tilt it either way. But I guess when I say counterclockwise, when I started on that moon, I went around this way, which is counterclockwise around the moon. So it's how you classify it. You just got to make sure that the save piece is on the lower side of the table from the blade.
Rick, I have a question. I know you said it's smoother and probably the angle of the table probably works better when it comes to straight blades. But if I use the spiral number 3, which is the smallest I can go on my saw easily, it would be a pretty steep angle. That would really be the only difference, wouldn't it?
With the wider cutting kerf, yeah, your angle is going to be changing a little bit. The biggest thing is you're not going to come up with a smooth edge that you do with a straight blade. And so the inlays are not going to quite fit as well. That little fuzzy that you normally see in your normal portrait type patterns is going to keep the two pieces from fitting tight unless you go in and kind of sand them off or burn them off or do something.
Okay, that's good to know. In the Q&A section before I move on to the panel, somebody wants to know what thickness wood do you use mostly?
Oh, depends on what I'm cutting. A lot of 1/8 and 1/4 Baltic birch, I guess. Now, I've also got another short video on doing the one with the raised wolf, if you want to see that one.
I don't have any objections. Does everybody get a thumbs up on the panel? we have 27 viewers, so I guess we were doing something right. So, yeah, if you'd like to show that, we can do that, and I'll present you back to everybody.
Okay, let's try to figure this out again. And this one should be the raised roof. And this one I tried to go through and not do quite all the details. We're going to cut out the pattern again. And it's sort of doing the same thing. The biggest thing you're doing is changing the table angle or tilt. And so again, you're going to use the same types of wood, the same types of pattern. Now, if you're going for a big variation, you can use different thicknesses of wood. For example, the walnut that I used for the mahogany, I guess, right there that I used for the face, that could be 1/2-inch wood. And then the moon, I could use 1/4-inch wood because I'm going to set it clear to the back anyway. The way I did it, I've got wood sticking out the back, so you could frame it or it just set out farther from the wall type of thing. But you could use different thicknesses of wood. But most of the time I just use all the same thickness. And you could take it to a belt sander and sand that moon sticking out the back off, but then the wolf is actually raised too, so it's going to make a difference. But again, we use this carpet tape to get it stuck in there. And the carpet tape is kind of quick and easy. I mean, there's probably other ways of doing it. The nice thing about the carpet tape is I can use smaller scraps of wood. You know, if I've got a piece of wood that's just big enough for the moon to fit on, I can use that. And as you can see, I don't always start out with nice square chunks of wood. This is a scrap off of something that I've done somewhere along the line, and I've got it marked there about where my pattern end is at. And again, we'll put it on there and make sure the tape sticks down good. And then we're going to cut it at the same type of angle, only our angle will just be a little bit more or less this time to get it to drop farther through. There I'm just cutting the scrap off the end so that I got more room to play and test it, because I know that that up on the top there is just waste area. So we're going to tilt the table, and this time we're trying to get that maple to fall about halfway through that mahogany back. So we'll have to tilt the table different than what we did before. Now see there, I'm too straight because it come clear through. Alright, so we need to tilt the table more. And a lot of times I just loosen it and just kind of bang it with the palm of my hand to move it, because to go down and look at the gauge on the saw is pretty tough. That gauge doesn't work all that good. And there you kind of get a glimpse of it. See, I'm just about flush, so I need to go a little bit more yet. And now flush is what we did before, but now I want it to set down in. And I think I must have done the table again. No, maybe not. So we'll try it again. And, you know, it may take quite a few test cuts, but you leave a little bit of scrap out here on your wood so that you've got room to make these little test cuts to get things set in. Alright, and so there I think I'm getting closer. Well, I almost got out of the view of the camera. Yeah, I'm getting close. I guess I did give it one more bang, and so we're going to go in and try it one more time. And, you know, you bang on the table and you aren't sure how much you've moved it. I usually loosen up the lock a little bit, but don't worry about it a whole lot. And there we can see now that I'm starting to get some of the white, you know, stuck through the wood. So if it's coming that far out the back, I know I'm recessed that much. So again, we're ready to go. We'll drill a hole in there, and I know that area down in there is waste area. And that we can cut into and not have to worry about filling the blade hole. Otherwise, the blade hole, you'd want to try to use a smaller drill bit, and then you can fill it in with a mixture of sawdust. Now, see there, if you look at the moon, see we're going counterclockwise around the moon, But I guess I'm not sure where the comment came as clockwise. But you know, I look at it, I'm going counterclockwise around the piece that I'm saving, and basically we're saying I'm saving the moon piece to be the biggest piece, and then the mahogany that is the backer is kind of sort of the waist area, I guess, of a normal cut. But it's just a quick and easy go around, and now this moon should drop down in and be recessed into the front. And sometimes you can get them pulled apart without the tool. Sometimes you need to go in and find something to pop that carpet tape. One time the carpet tape sticks like glue, and then the next time it almost wants to fall off. But you know, you get by with whatever it does. It's kind of, you just go do it. Now here you got to make sure you put the moon in the right direction. It doesn't fit there. And then I decided, oh, I turned it upside down somewhere along the line. So let's turn it over. And now it fits in. And as you can see now, when that moon goes in, it recesses into the wood. And that all came about just by changing the angle of the table. So we actually tilted the table a little bit more than we did with the other one, which allowed the moon to drop down farther. Or no, we tilted it less and got the moon to drop down farther, thinking that if we cut it straight, it would fall clear through. So now we're going to cut the wolf out, and so now we do the opposite. And we know that that over there is waist out in that area, so we can go do a test cut there to get the table set. Now you can put strips on the back to try to level out the board, and I just put them on there again with some carpet tape. If you want to take it to the belt sander and sand that moon off, or if you use two different thicknesses of wood, you know, you would have that solved, that the back would be flat. But this is just try to level it out so that the thing won't rock when I'm trying to cut it. Alright, now we need to go do some more test cuts, and we're going to have to tilt the table more now because we want the wolf to be higher than the backing mahogany piece. And so you just start test cutting and see how high you want it to fit. And it looks like there I come out pretty good on the first time, because see, I've got about half of the wood sticking up. So I think I'm good on that. So now we'll just go in and cut that wolf out. And after we cut that one out, then he should come in as raised. Now, as you notice, I didn't glue the moon in again. Normally, a person should go in and glue those other parts in. At one time, Scott and Roy with Scroller were making some really detailed patterns doing this type of theory on it. They had index marks and everything for them. And those patterns were bought by Winfield, but I don't think I've ever seen them come back out from Winfield in the Scroller magazine. So whether they still have them, I don't know what they did with them. But Scott and Roy had a pretty good series of doing some of these inlay patterns. And again, there's my wolf, and as you can see, we're cut into the moon. And as you notice there's no fuzzies on the back of that because we're using the reverse tooth blade. It's not like your spiral blades where you've got all the fuzzies to deal with. This doesn't have any. Well, you got to take the wolf from the top, stupid, because the bottom is the small part. And now there we go. The wolf will drop right down in there. And if you would have glued the moon in, it would have been a little bit easier. But anyway, now the wolf goes in and we're squared off. You know, we've got the wolf raised and the moon is down. So it's pretty easy. We go ahead and glue that up and finish it. And here's a finished picture of that with the moon in the background and the wolf raised. So I think that covers that. Stop sharing and get back to the chat. So questions on that one?
Well, first I gotta say it's amazing how easy you make it look, and you probably say, well, it is easy. I've always been too scared, for lack of a better word, to try it, but I think when you did the recessed down moon and raised up wolf, I think that added dimension to it. And there again, you could also raise it up and then sand the edges kind of round to sort of make it almost intarsia-like. But I like both examples. But before I get to the panel, I had two questions in the Q&A section. Tom Watson wants to know, where did you get the hand drill?
The hand drill is a Fordham drill, and then you could buy, it came with a regular hand set, I guess you'd say, that had 1/8" chuck in it. But through Fordham, you can also buy one that's got a keyed chuck, so you can take it down to any size drill you want. And that's the one I run, is a keyed chuck. Dremel also makes one that'll hold the bits, and you can buy different size collets to go in the Dremel, and then try to get a collet that'll fit the smaller drill bits. But the one I'm using is Fordham.
Alrighty, I think I could be mistaken. I think Carl Taylor also sells those. I could be wrong, but Carl Becker wants to know: is there a formula or general rule that will determine the angle of the table based upon the thickness of the wood, assuming that it is completely flush with the bottom wood?
Not really. Blade width, size, so the size of your kerf is going to make a difference. The other one that some people have a problem with is once they tilt that table, they have a tendency to pull that wood, I guess not pull it, or let it slide down that bevel. So it's just a matter of somewhere probably around 3 degrees. So we could say from 2 to 5 degrees is probably going to be where it's at. You just run little test cuts and see where it goes.
Alrighty, I've noticed in inlay videos I've seen that people are using flat blades. It always seemed to be 3 degrees, always seemed to be the happy medium on that. Thank you, Carl and Tom, for your questions. Anybody on the panel has a question, just unmute yourself, say your name, and I'll put the camera on you. Or we could all stay quiet and just make me feel real awkward.
I got a question, it's John.
John Schaffner?
Yes, I do. If you were to use spiral blades doing the inlay technique, would you have to spin like you would a flat blade, or could you just use it like you would a spiral blade? It seems to me the bevel would be screwy. On one side it would be one way, and it would be the same way on the other side of the pattern. So it wouldn't set in right. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, like I said before when I talked about the spiral blades, the biggest thing with the spiral blades is, to me, the edges of a cut of a spiral blade are not as smooth as the edges made by a straight blade. And so you may have to do some cleanup there. Your kerf width is going to be a lot bigger on a spiral blade than it is on a flat blade. So your angle may change a little bit, but it'd probably be more. I would say maybe like a 4.5 degree angle might do it.
Well, what I'm referring to is the bevel as you're cutting it. As you go around that pattern, it's the bevel on one side is going to be the same as the other side. So it seems to me as though it wouldn't sit in right, in the same direction. On one side of the pattern it would be this way, and on the other side of the pattern it would be this way. Unless you're spinning it around.
But you're dropping the piece straight down in from where you cut it. So no matter whether you cut and follow the line or miss the line, it's still going to be the same bevel on the hole and the piece.
Yeah, John, I don't know anything about inlay, but I know what he's saying is even if you're using a spiral, you still have to spin that piece to get a consistent bevel at the same angle. That way it drops in almost like a bowl. But if you did, what you were talking about is like if you had the angle going the same way by not spinning the piece and you were just moving the piece around like this, then that would make an awkward angle. So I think that's the angle you were going for.
Yeah, that's what I was headed in. That direction I was headed in, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now I see what he's saying. Yeah. I've never tried it, so I can't tell you for sure. But I guess that would screw it up, maybe.
Bob Rawson says, thank you, Rick. Great demo. I'm learning a lot from you guys. Thank you very much, Bob Rawson. Is there anybody else on the panel that would like to say anything? If so, unmute yourself, say your name, and I'll put the camera on you. And this is where the crickets would go, but...
I just kind of think, this is Russ, and I just kind of think like Rick, I mean, spiral blades have their limitations, and the kerf of the spiral blade is naturally going to be a lot thicker than that of a flat blade. So I can see that you could possibly do it with a spiral blade, but I don't think you would have as good results as you would using a flat blade. You can use a real small, thin, even a number 1, if you're doing soft woods, on making those cuts, and they would fit nicely together. So I'm not saying you couldn't do it with a spiral blade, but I can see that there would be a lot of problems doing it with a spiral blade.
Yeah, I think, and this is just my opinion because all I use is spirals, and I know I've been challenged by at least 4 people to use straight blades, Mark Sherman being one of them. Yes, you got credit, sir. Now, I think it could be done with a spiral, but yes, there's a lot more trial and error and a lot rougher cutting as far as, well, staying on the line to begin with. If you have practice, can be done, but Rick has something he wants to say, so I'm going to go over to him.
Okay. One of the very first inlays I did years ago was for a money clip for Wood Magazine, and the way they had me cut it was just straight down, which you could do with a spiral blade. And then, of course, then the inlay was smaller, but then we used black epoxy that we just colored with copier toner into regular epoxy and made it black. And so that left a black outline all the way around the inlay. And that you could do with spiral blades, but you'd end up with a black outline around it.
That makes sense. Now, as far as the fuzzies, anybody that uses spirals or are used to dealing with those, I can get those off, no problem. It's just, I think the biggest, and this is just my uneducated guess, is the biggest difference would be the angle of the table because of the width of the blade. I feel safe in assuming that. I guess that would be the biggest thing besides lack of a perfect clean cut, Rick?
Yeah, I think you're right. It'd just be different.
Well, yeah, even with you using flat blades, you had to do a trial and error, but yeah, most people's sweet spot is between 3 and 5 degrees. I'll probably have to go 7 or 8 because the smallest blade I use is a 3, but so nobody else on the panel has a question for Mr. Rick? Going once? Alrighty. Okay, what we have in the notes after Rick's, thank you very much, Rick, by the way, for doing that. That means quite a bit. We had 27 viewers on average. Right now we have 24. Next we were going to just discuss inlays in general, so being that nobody had any questions, I'm not entirely sure where to go with that, so I can throw it to Russ since he came up with that idea. No pressure, Russ.
No, inlays in general, I mean, I was just going to ask you down the panel, or my thing was to ask down the panel was, each person, have you tried an inlay and how did you do it? I'll start it off. The inlays that I've done over the years that I have practiced with, I found with the thin blades that they've come out with, like the 2-aught, that you can actually didn't have to angle the table. The few that I've done, I did straight up and down, and they fit just as nicely and every bit as good as with the angle. So, I mean, that's just to throw out my 2 cents. I've tried them with them just straight up and down rather than doing an angle. So I just go down the panel and start asking everybody, have you tried to do inlays, and how did you accomplish it? So.
Okay, well, Russ, with you doing that, was it a matter of sawdust and glue to fill in the gap, even though it was tiny?
Yeah, that's all I did. I just did a little, took the sawdust off the table when I glued it in and spread it around on there and waited for it to dry and sanded it off, and it looked perfect. I mean, you couldn't even tell that it didn't need the angle.
Now see, a lot of people joke with me that it would be a blooper video to watch me using straight blades, and it probably would be. But I think if I got into it, that would be the niche I would shoot for, is inlays, because I love how they look, especially with contrasting woods, and the possibilities with inlay are just pretty much endless, just like even portraiture and shelves and crosses. And there again, Rick has many, 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 many. I think he said he had 1,200 Victorian designs he now owns the copyright on, has made books and books and books of them, 200 books, I believe. That's sort of going off topic, but I'll go down the line. Go ahead. Who was talking? Russ?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was trying to figure out who was talking.
That was me. I made a noise and it sounded like I was talking. I'll mute myself.
It's all good. I'm going to go down the line. Even if you have no comment, just say I got nothing to add. But I'll go from left to right on my screen would be Bill Heitman. Have you ever inlaid? Do you want to inlay all that other fancy stuff?
Yeah, I've inlaid a couple of times, and in fact, one of the things I do teach scroll sawing also, and I use John Nelson's book as kind of a guideline, and I suggest that they get John Nelson's book. And he's got a real nice hummingbird inlay, but yeah, you almost got to have that angle, and I can see on the round blades or spiral blades, it might be almost impossible, especially with the real irregular shape, if you're used to just moving the wood rather than the blade, to get that to come out to where it would fit back in. It's the only major thing I see with the spiral blades. It'd be almost impossible to, especially having the habit of moving the wood rather than turning the wood.
Okay. Do you happen to remember the exact title of John Nelson's book?
No, it's in its second edition. Basic Scroll Saw workbook.
Okay,
Workbook.
so the book itself isn't about inlay, it's just included in that?
It's included in that. There's probably like 25, 27 projects that he starts out, just basically doing a straight line, a curved line, then you do a real simple animal, and then you do some fret work, and it's do the spiral bowls, inlays. It's just kind of a really basic but all-inclusive to starting out on the scroll saw.
Alrighty, I appreciate your input and the like. And Dan Molesky, have you ever done inlay, or are you interested in trying it, or did all this just scare the heck out of you?
Bought an RBI, whoops, unmute now. Bought an RBI Hawk off of Craigslist a couple years ago. Started playing around with trying to do the inlay kind of thing by tipping the table. One thing that was bugging me was wherever I had to drill to get the saw blade in, I'd have a little hole, and I just didn't understand how to make that hole look as part of the design. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can understand that, especially with a flat blade, your pilot hole, trying to discreetly make it part of the cutting without it being obvious that there was a hole drilled there. And I think most people with a flat blade will just kind of round the cut out a little bit. I don't have enough experience with flat blades, and I'll let, as I go down the line, if anybody has experience with a flat blade doing that, then they could probably answer. But before I go to the next person, I'm going to read the two Q&A comments. Steve OTM1 says Scroll Saw Workbook by John Nelson, so you were correct, Bill. It was either you said he had one or two workbooks, or is there only one out there?
Just one. It's in the second or third edition, but it's basically the same book.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Steve, for the question. We have one more. DWSSR, I can never remember this person's name, forgive me, says, I'm a beginner scroll sawer. What would be the difference between larger and smaller blades besides thinner curve and breaking easier? Now, the only answer I can give, I'll go down the line if anybody else wants to interject, is the amount of teeth. The amount of teeth plays into how well it cuts and what it cuts. And breaking easier is usually the smaller blades, and it also plays into how much you put stress on the blade if you don't let the blade do the cutting. But let me go to Rick and Russ on this because they seem to know the most about the differences in blades. Rick, do you want to go first?
Okay. The smaller blades are usually used for the thinner woods, normally, and then the thicker blades for the heavier, tougher woods. The biggest thing about using the smaller blades is you can make your turns and cuts a lot tighter radius the smaller blade you go. Once you get used to them, people say it can't be done, but I've actually cut 2x4s with a 2/0 blade, and you just got to go slow, but they'll actually cut it. It's just slow going. But usually the radius and the detail of the cut will dictate the size blade you can use.
All right, thank you very much for that, Rick. He had a second part to that, was do larger blades cut more aggressively? And there again, it depends on the speed of the saw and the rate at which you're feeding in. That I can say from experience because I use large spirals, and I would imagine the same would be the case for the flat blades. But let me try to go back over the thoughts I had regarding those.
I have one thing to interject. This is Russ.
Okay, go ahead, Russ.
Like Rick said, definitely the thinner the blade, the smaller the kerf, the thinner the line, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I, on numerous occasions, when I've done cutting 3/4 inch cherry or oak or even mahogany, where I have had some very detailed work, I will use I've used a number 1 Flying Dutchman blade and to cut the more delicate, intricate work, and not had any problems. You just have to. You can't push those blades in that thick of wood. You have to take your time, and but you can definitely cut a lot thicker wood with a thin kerf blade. You just can't hurry yourself. Be patient. Take it or do it, and I think that goes back to the inlays again. The thinner the blade, smaller the kerf when you're doing inlays. You naturally wouldn't want to do a number 5 blade, which has a real wide kerf, and that's about it.
Thank you, Russ. And I think Michaela may have left during Rick's tutorial, so please pass on to her that we appreciated having her on. And I appreciate you having her on for the sake of knowing that there was an example of she's 16 years old and genuinely interested in the craft or art or whatever you want to call it, and I like that. I've taught anywhere from 8 to 11 or 12 years old, but they don't stay on it. They kind of like the idea of making their own thing, but they don't stay hooked with it. The ones I've taught, but if they were around me all the time, maybe they would. I don't know. But one thing, unless anybody had any other input on inlay or blades in general, I wanted to show something, but I'll be fair and allow anybody else to talk that had a point of some kind. If you do, just unmute yourself, say your name, and I'll put the camera on you. And the crickets are here. Okay. This is sort of self-public, not self-publishing, self-promotion. But I have recently started designing baskets, and I think part of the reason why I'm not getting any sales on them is because I think people are trying to figure out how they work, and because I tend to do detail a lot, they might be thinking, there's no way I can do this guy's work. But I wanted to show y'all, if y'all are okay with sitting through it, I will show you each step of it without going into major detail. But this this would be the basket. Wait, let me present it to everybody so I make sure I'm full screen on. This would be the oval basket. The top and bottom are the exact same shape. It's 3 layers. I happen to use pine. None of these are exotic woods. And I believe the top and bottom are 3/16 each, but that would vary. But the premise of making, now the ones I've designed, this is after I designed that I included this. It's not on here, but it would have a guide that would bump up against the weave so it wouldn't go anywhere, so that this would keep the lid from moving. But when you get the pattern, if you decide to buy one, you'll have a blue layer and a red layer. The blue layer you make 2 of, and that will look like this. This is for an oval basket. I have many designs, but I don't know how well y'all can see that. It doesn't have to be cut that thin. But you do 2 of the blue layer, and that will make it to the top and bottom layer of the weave. And they're the exact same. That's why you make 2 of them. The red layer will be just 1 layer. That will be the middle layer. And when you stack them on top of each other, you get your weave pattern. That's just the top and middle layer showing. But I'm hoping by visually showing people that this will help encourage them that it's not a difficult project and it's not one of those scary Charlie detail patterns. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case seeing it visually, that's the only way to see something unless you see it in your mind. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there in case that was holding anybody back from going there. But I have many, many, many designs of baskets, and I'm sorry for plugging myself. Just wanted to throw that in there. And next in line, we had sanding. What do you use to sand primarily? Is it a belt sander or is it a belt/disc sander? And I guess we'll go down the line with that. Bill Heitman, do you use just a typical monster belt sander or a disc sander or both?
I have the orbital sander, and I have a disc sander, and I have a belt sander, and then I have the hand spiral or orbital sander. Probably what I use most is the belt sander. And then just after I've gone on the belt, I'll probably go back to my orbital sander and go 350 grit or 320 grit, and just for finishing.
Alrighty, thank you, sir. I guess I should answer the question too. The only time I use a belt sander is if, let's say you're doing a circle, because a lot of people think a circle is very hard to do, and it can be. Cut just outside that line, you can use a belt sander to sand to the line, and that'll give you the smooth edge you're looking for. Now, when I've done vases and bowls out of scroll saw, you can use one of those 1-inch belt sanders, and that'll help that. But they Klingspor, KLINGSPOOR.com also makes, inflatable sanders and drum sanders and all kinds of stuff. But before I move to Mr. Dan, I had a question for Rick for earlier, so I didn't want to get too far past it. Rick Carlbecker wants to know, could you answer the issue about minimizing the drill entry hole as well as angling the entry hole?
Okay, the drill, you can get small drill bits. I think Flying Dutchman carries them. There's quite a few others that carry them. And there's actually some charts there usually with those small drill bits on the sides. And I want to say it's a number 64 drill bit is for the 2/0, or maybe that's the 5. Maybe it's a 64 and a 72 fit the 2/0 and the 5. But you can go to smaller drill bits. And then is what a lot of them do. If you think about it, your bottom layer is actually going to be smaller than the top layer. So if you drill at an angle, you aren't going to touch that bottom layer at all. The drill hole is going to be in the waist. And then the drill hole in the top layer, you can use some sanding dust and glue to fill in that hole to match the wood of the top layer. But use the smallest drill bit you can to get the blade through if you're going to be doing an inlay where you're, inside of a piece and not have an overlap to it.
Yeah, and that'll eliminate people seeing that a pilot hole too, I would imagine. Bob Rawson writes, I have a budget scroll saw that uses adapters for pinless blades. I want to use the fixed clamp to use pinless. Been told this type of blade clamp will break blades because it will bend the pin blade ends at the top when these saw arms arc. Is this true? I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but Rick, do you want to answer that one? I can repeat it if you want me to.
No, I see the question there. Some of them, the blade clamp doesn't swivel. And so, yes, you do. As the arms go up and down, they're moving. So that blade is actually doing a little bit of an arc, I guess you'd say, and it does bend them. But I've never found it to really make that much of a difference. On the Hegner and some of the little deltas and stuff, you could crank that top blade clamp screw down so that that clamp wouldn't swivel, and I never saw any more breakage. The biggest thing is on some of the saws now, he's saying one that has the pinless blade adapter. Some of those adapters are machined a little rough, and it may be a burr on the bottom of that adapter. So you may want to go in with like some sandpaper and just lightly clean off the bottom edge of that adapter where the blade actually comes out of it to make sure there's no burrs on it.
Alrighty, thank you, Rick, and thank you for the question, sir. Moving on to the sanding belt and/or disc. Dan Molesky, do you use either one, or do you have a
preference? I've got every kind of sander in my shop, and I've used the belt sander some when I'm doing scroll work, but don't overlook the little hand sanders. It's a very small piece, it uses a belt about 1/4 inch wide, and it's a little spring-loaded plastic fixture holding this little 1/4 inch wide belt that lets you get inside of the scroll work. Does that make sense? Have you seen what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, it does. I believe you're called. I can't remember who made them, but they came in yellow cardboard and see-through plastic.
Yeah. My father-in-law gave me a couple of them a couple years ago, and about the only thing that he's helped me with my woodworking was with that little bit of a sander thing. It's not very big, but it's pretty handy. I use it a lot. I like it.
Yeah, if you find something that works, it's good to have, especially for sanding interior cuts.
Yeah.
Bob Rawson says, I've tried mine for a couple of cuts and it seems okay. Thank you, Bob. I don't know if we've even spoken to Donald. I don't know if Donald even has a mic or a webcam, but he may just be wanting to stalk us. But, Donald, I'm going to give you 2 seconds to try to say or show or something. Okay. No offense. Moving over to John Cousins. And John, do you use a belt sander, disc sander, or both?
I got an orbital sander, a palm sander, and a belt sander as well. I usually use my palm sander the most for cleaning up the backs of all my stuff, but the belt sander I use mostly for cleaning like bigger areas though. It's a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention I use the palm sander to get a majority of the fuzzies off. Fuzzies are synonymous with spiral blades, but then I'll use needle files after that to get the edges that the sander couldn't get to. Mr. John Schaffner, do you use belt sander, disc sander, or both?
I have a random orbit sander. I have a portable belt sander. I've got one of those 1-inch belt sanders with I think it's an 8-inch disc on it, and a couple, various hand sanders and whatnot. But about the only sander machine I use is my random orbit to do the surfaces, the top and the bottom of the cuts. But any interior stuff that I use, like you suggested using needle file, I use those and emery boards. Work great on the interior cuts too. So those are really my go-to. I've got a ton of them out in the shop, so I use them all the time.
Yeah, thank you. I'd forgotten all about the emery board thing. That's another good idea. You can also cut cut them down and have narrower strips to use. And I'll get to you in just a sec, Mark. We got another question, or another question in the Q&A for Rick. Rick, he said, Steve says he missed what 3 woods you were using, and what kind were they?
The first one was oak background with maple for the moon and walnut for the wolf. The second one was mahogany and maple and walnut.
I love contrasting things, and that was probably the perfect example of that. Thank you for your question, Steve. Moving down the line to the naked scroller, Mark Stallings. What do you use? I know you haven't been scrolling very long, but do you use a belt sander, disc sander, or both?
Well, in honor of Frank Tart, I've got a Harbor Freight disc belt sander combination. And I've also got a palm sander that I run finer grit on to prepare for my finish. So.
All right, I'm about to sneeze to try to say some more.
Okay, sneeze, 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 sneeze.
That's not the same as yawning, but thank you for trying. I can always depend on Mark to help me. Thank you, Mark. Well, I don't know that we've asked Rick. Rick, I imagine you use every sander in the world. Do you have every scroll saw in the world?
I've got quite a few different sanders. I've got the belt, the disc, the oscillating spindle, orbital disc. But the one I use 90% of the time, 98% of the time, is just a quarter sheet pad finish sander. And I find that does just as good. And I see we got a question on there about using the sanding strips again. Take your old sanding belts and cut them into 5-inch lengths and rip off strips that are 1/8 of an inch wide. Put those in your saw instead of the blade. The other thing you can do is take your wood Inlay boards or cardboard, whatever the heck they are, and cut them down with a utility knife into 1/8-inch strips and mount the emery board in your saw. So you don't need to buy them stupid sanding strips that they sell with the plastic pins on them or something. Just a straight piece of a belt sander belt will do that. But
Go ahead.
Like I say, normally for all my sanding, I just use a quarter sheet finish sander.
All right, thank you. I remember when Sterling Davis was on the show, he mentioned, we were all talking how we weren't much into those things. They had the plastic ends and they were sandpaper in between. And then he was kind of embarrassed and said, well, I use them. So that was kind of funny. Another thing, if you don't use the emery board but you want stronger strength than just that paper sandpaper, you can do it a little wider, roll it up or fold it up, and it'll have more girth to it, and therefore it would be a little stronger. So thank you for that question, Bob. Now going back
to that, Charlie. At one time, I don't know if they're available anymore. One company was using, I would say, like a number 12 scroll saw blade with no teeth on it, and then you were using the adhesive back sandpaper and just wrapping that around that blade and sticking it and running that.
Alrighty, this is true, and the Mark brought to my attention those I had forgotten, the ones with the plastic ends that are meant to fit in your clamps that have sandpaper in between the plastic ends is made by Olsen, O-L-S-E-N. Speaking of Olsen, Russell has experimented with Olsen to know what everybody else was talking about the difference between Olsen and Flying Dutchman, and I'm going to let him give a review live on the air. Go ahead, Mr. Russell.
No, I'm not ready to do that, but I do. I would like to comment more on the sanding thing.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's no okay. It's no big deal. Actually, I think I have more sanding machines in my shop than I do anything else. After I got to sit around thinking about it, I have anywhere from a 1/2-inch a finger sander all the way up to a 6-inch by 36-inch industrial sander with a 14-inch disc on the side, to orbital drum sander will take up to 3.5-inch.
Wow.
Yeah, I pretty much I can think of about, I've probably got about 15 or 20 sanders in my shop. So I think sanding is almost as important as any other part of the anything else in your shop.
Yeah.
The other thing I would like to point out also is the Flying Dutchman scroll reverse, ultra reverse blades that they've come out with. I've been using them for the last couple of years since they've come out with them, maybe 3 years. I don't remember exactly the time, but those ultra reverse blades, they create such a smooth cut on the front and the back that, to be honest with you, most of my projects that I turn out when I cut with them, even my fine word art, I don't even see any need for sanding in between. It doesn't leave any burrs on the back. It's a very smooth cut up and down. So therefore, a lot of my sanding tools that I've used throughout the time has become antiquated because of those blades. It produces such a clean, precision cut that is just unbelievable. I was really just admired of the fact that how smooth the cut was when I first started using them.
Russell's right. I don't spend much time sanding on scroll work. Other things I do, I might sand quite a bit, but not scroll work.
Who are we talking? Dan? Was that you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
No problem.
Yeah, ultra reverse blades that Flying Dutchman put out, I'm serious. The cut is so fine on the inside and outside corners that you don't require a lot of sanding.
By the way, DWSSR.
How many of you have tried the sand flea sander?
I haven't.
I built my own.
I've been told they're, very limited usage for what they can be used for, so I can't answer it, but I've heard the feedback. It's good for the folks that use it, but...
I built my own, Rick, and the only thing that I find it is of use for is if I am cutting portraits and using spiral blades, which create the fuzzies on the back side of the portraits, which I will hands down admit Charles has got the spiral blades. He can use them better than anybody else, but they do create the fuzzies on the back. I use my sand flea to run the portrait across it to remove the fuzzies off the back. Other than that, it's about useless.
I pretty much agree. I've got the original sand flea, about $500 worth or whatever with the motor and stuff. And it makes a nice table.
I've got you beat on that. I only spent $150 and I built my own.
Well, I haven't built one, so there. DWSSR in the Q&A section said the Olsen sanding strips will not fit in the Hegner saw, and I have a Hegner, and I agree with that. They're very thick plastics. You have to have a very flexible upper blade clamp and lower blade clamp because the clamps that you get for a Hegner are way too narrow for that, so I agree with that. He also says, I agree the ultra reverse blades are cut very smooth. So thank you for that, Mr. DWSSR. I still don't remember your name.
Now, one thing I'd like to interject there, Charles, since you opened the door and allowed me to walk into it about the Olsen blades. Do you mind if I go there?
I don't mind at all.
Okay. I started out with a Craftsman years ago. One of my very first saws over 30 years ago was a Craftsman scroll saw. And I've worked my way up through the years and used different saws and different blades. Then I found Flying Dutchman blades. And actually it was through Steve Good and several years ago that I found out about Flying Dutchman blades and ordered my first set and started using them. And to be honest with you, I didn't think there was anything on this planet that could ever replace them. And I've heard so many people talk about these Olsen blades. Now, I haven't tried the Pegasus blades or any of the other ones, but So I decided about 3 or 4 weeks ago that I was going to order some Olsen blades in. First off, I would like to say is when you order Olsen blades, prepare to get Social Security first because it takes a long time for you to get it.
Well, at least from the supplier you bought them from.
I ordered them from Wooden Teddy Bear, or what is that? That's the name?
Yeah, that's a Wooden Teddy Bear.
Yeah, and I was astonished that it took me about almost 2 weeks to get them. I can't figure that out since they're in the continental United States. I can order from North or South Dakota, wherever Mike's at, and get them in 3 to 4 days, and it took me 2 weeks to get these. So that's the first thing, and I thought, like, wow, really? It takes that long to get them? So, but the second thing, I tried them, and I'm being open-minded here because I'm thinking to myself, I've heard so many people talk about these Olsen blades that I was thinking, wow, when I put them in my saw, I'm going to see a ton of difference. I can say that I wasn't totally disappointed with the Olsen blades. They cut all right. But I understand why people say the difference between the Olsen blades now and the Flying Dutchman blades. First off, Olsen blades cannot hold a matchstick in any way, shape, or form as to the Ultra Reverse Flying Dutchman. I ordered various types and tried them all. And every Olsen blade I tried in their realm of what was supposed to be equal to the Flying Dutchman Ultimate Reverse, the cuts were just lousy as far as on the backside. Now, I'm not saying the cut itself, but on the backside there was a lot of fuzzies. Flying Dutchman left almost none. But I understand why people talk about it's hard to control a fly. I didn't understand it before, why it's hard to control a Flying Dutchman. A Flying Dutchman is very, very aggressive compared to an Olsen. And I know there's going to be people out there that's going to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or you don't know. I've used Flying Dutchman for years, and they're a very aggressive blade. Olsen is not near as aggressive. So therefore, you may construe that it is a little bit better or easier to control. I'm not arguing that point. But when you go to the fact that on the back side you're going to have a lot more fuzzies, I just found that it wasn't that great of a blade. I still hold true to my Flying Dutchman. They're aggressive. You have to take your time, or you have to learn how to control the blade. You're the master of this project. The blade's not the master. You're holding the wood. You can control how fast you feed it or how you turn it or whatever you make in those steps. Olsen, yes. They were a lot, or not a lot, but they were easier to control because they're not as aggressive. But when you take that point off that they leave so many fuzzies on the back side, I'm sorry, I'll stay with my Flying Dutchmans.
And I think what you're calling aggressive and non-aggressive is the speed of the actual cutting, and not necessarily the speed of the scroll saw, but what they're calling aggressive is because it cuts faster.
Oh yeah, a Flying Dutchman was like I'll put an Olsen and a Flying Dutchman, and I'll give you the same pattern in the same wood, cut from the same tree, on the same day. In the same hour and the same second, and the Flying Dutchman will cut 10 times faster than an Olsen will. That's the reason I think that people find the Olsen's a little bit better than the Flying Dutchman, is because they're not as aggressive. They cut a little slower. Yes, they are a little easier to control. I'll give them that hands down because they're not as aggressive. But once you learn to master the Flying Dutchman, you've got the best of both worlds. You have no fuzzies on the back, and you can cut as fast as you want.
That I think I'm just loyal, but I can understand those that want the smoother cutting, you know, this and that. I can see the value of both ends, but I guess some of us are.
I cut with the Olsens. I've been cutting with them for the last 2 weeks since I ordered them, and I'm ordered the Mach series, which were supposed to be the better or the fastest or the for better. I want to say better for thicker woods or faster or whatever. I've ordered the Mach series. I ordered the I've ordered several different types, and I've tried each one of each type, and the thinner and the larger. And they're not a bad blade. I'm not going to condemn them. No way. Actually, I think they might be better for the beginner scroller due to the fact they're not as aggressive. But if you once you get better in the profession, so to speak, hands down, I'll put a Flying Dutchman against them any day of the week.
Yeah, that was one of the questions somebody had. Rick was asking if you had the Mach.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry. I seen you holding your hand up.
That's what he asked was if you use the Mach series, unless he has another comment. Do you have
I got the Mach series. I got them sitting right over here. I ordered them too and went through them, and I just don't find them as aggressive as I was cutting through 3/4 inch cherry with the Mach, and then changed over the Flying Dutchman, and man, Flying Dutchman there's all the different, and I understand why people say they don't like the Flying Dutchman. They can be hard to control. They can be hard to make a turn. They can want to wander. It's not the blade's fault. It's you understanding how they are aggressive and how to control them.
Yeah, and as he was saying, that blade cannot. That blade just goes up and down. It's not going to jump and attack your wood. It sounds like I'm trying to be funny, but I'm echoing exactly what Russ said. But that wood cannot go, and I mean that blade cannot go a direction or a speed into a cut any more than you steer or push.
Well, I read a comment on Facebook a while back that somebody said, I do not understand how you can use those Flying Dutchman blades. They want to wander, they want to do this, they want to do that, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't have those problems. And so I'm not, I want to find a better way if there's a way out there. And so I ordered the Olson blades, and I ordered different types of them to experiment with them, and I tried them for the last 3 weeks, and I'm not going to condemn them as far as being a bad blade. They're a heck of a lot better than a lot of the blades on the market, and if I was to say what was my number one and number two, Flying Dutchman are number one, Olson would, yes, definitely be my number two of anything else I've ever used and tried. As far as Craftsman and a few of the others, they're all crappy blades anyway. But I'll put a Flying Dutchman against an Olson any day of the week, any way, shape, or form. Put me on a scroll saw with one of them, and I'll take you on.
What about the Pegasus?
Yeah, the Pegasus, he said he hadn't tried yet.
I haven't tried the Pegasus, and I really want to try them too. Because I'm not going to be blind to, I just don't want somebody to tell me. I want to try it for myself and see. And so if I'll find out whether I can order some, and I'll order them in and try them. I would love to experiment on them.
I went to the extent of mounting my second scroll saw a little bit on the bench so that I would have the illusion I was pushing straight into the wood. Because every damn blade I use, Flying Dutchman or Olson both, go off at about 15, 20 degrees. Seems like.
Oh, that's an inheritance of the blade. The blade will not cut straight per se. It cuts at a slight angle. You have to adjust your thinking as to turn the wood, so to speak, to compensate for that. It's the way the blade.
I turned the saw on the bench.
Yeah,
but Pegasus is supposed to go straight. I think Pegasus says.
I would beg to differ. I want to see that because bandsaw blades are made the same basic way. They have an inherent little curve to them. Other blades that I've tried have an inherent curve to them. So I want to try these blades to see if they're any better than what I've done with.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. If anybody here has tried them, I have not.
I haven't tried Pegasus or Olson, but I do want to tell y'all a lot of what I hear through the years is when the straight blades are manufactured, they can have even if you can't see it, a slight burr on one side of that blade. So some people will sand or file the back end of that blade, and sometimes that helps it cut straight at you. Maybe not perfectly, but it'll get less of an angle that it wants to go at because of that manufactured curve. It's not intentional. They just have those burrs on the backs of them.
I think Rick was trying to say something.
Go ahead, Rick.
If you want a blade that will cut straight, buy the PGT blades. They'll cut straight because they're down different than the other blades. But all the blades have a burr on the side that makes them cut off to the right.
What a PGT is? Whose manufactures that, Rick?
Never heard of it.
Olston makes them. It's a precision ground tooth blade. And where the standard blades are somewhat stamped from the side to make the teeth, the precision grounds, they hold the blade and go in at 90 degrees to the blade with a circular cutter and actually grind the teeth into the blade, so the burr is on both sides.
Well, that's definitely precision. I had questions in the Q&A section for Rick, so I didn't mean to interrupt you if you had more to add, Russ. I just wanted to get these questions to Rick.
Go ahead.
They wanted, Paul Keene says, Rick mentioned counterclockwise and clockwise cutting. From what I see in the video, when he was cutting out the moon, the blade was on the left side of the moon and cutting the moon out counterclockwise. However, to achieve this, he was turning the wood clockwise. Hope this helps somebody. I don't have a clue what that means because I have two brain cells and they collide. But did you comprehend any of that?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Yeah, the moon turned clockwise, but if you're looking at the cut around the circle and not considering it a moon, we're cutting counterclockwise around the circle.
Alrighty, forgive my delay there. Thank you for mentioning that, Paul. Now, we still have 27 viewers, and this show's never stopped at an hour, and we're already close to an hour and a half, but people love Russ's tutorials, and we flat babbled right through. Well, not babbled, we taught and learned. Russ can show us relatively quickly how to do text on a curve in Inkscape. And his tutorials. Well,
that now?
Well, your tutorials on Inkscape have been very popular, gotten great feedback. So I think with 27 viewers and a pretty much full panel, I personally don't think anybody would mind. If anybody doesn't want Russ to do his text on a curve tutorial in Inkscape, put a thumbs down. I say go for it, but it's up to y'all as a group. Viewers, we're at 27.
Hopefully I can remember how to do it.
From this morning?
Hey, I have a short memory.
It goes relatively quick, and I know a lot of these shows stop at an hour, but we've been known to go an hour and a half, and with Steve Good, we went 2.5 hours. Right now we're at an hour and a half, so I personally don't mind. Does anybody on the panel have any objections or any viewers?
Well, give me a second to get things set up.
Okay, we got one thumbs up. It's hard to tell on the thumbnails because they freeze up a lot. But by the way, while he's getting set up for the viewers, if you don't know, to get to the Q&A section, if you're sitting there thinking, how are all these people submitting comments and questions, you just go to the right side of your screen and at the screen you're at, unless you're on YouTube. You have to be at the link that was to watch and submit questions. You'll see somewhere in here there will be a, not my logo, but you'll see what looks like the side of a Rubik's Cube, a square with a bunch of squares in it. And you click on that, and that will open up the Q&A section. That's how viewers are able to ask questions. So we can sit here.
Right.
Okay.
I
says go for it.
Thanks, guys. Night.
What'd you say, Dan?
I gotta head out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll go to screen share.
2 feedbacks. Bob Rawson and Patrick Murphy both say go for it, Russ. So go on with your bad self.
All right, can you see my screen?
I'm getting there. Yes, I can. I'm presenting you to everyone. So 26 viewers. And before you get going, Russ, any viewers, we got 26 of them, and any panel members that have a question, feel free to ask while he's doing the tutorial. You may have to interrupt because he doesn't stop talking much during it. And I don't mean that as a cut down because he's trying to be consistent and not flat.
Charles, you interrupt me all the time anyway, so what are you worried about?
Well, I have to trying to. Okay, yeah, you got me on that one. I got no comeback, but I try to help when I interrupt. But anyway, 26 viewers. I showed y'all how to ask questions. Anybody on the panel, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in, even if you want to do it in the chat section. And if I can find 2 breaths to say it in, I will interrupt Russ long enough to ask him. But go ahead, Russ. You're on, baby.
Yeah, it's all good. I was talking to Charles today, and I told him, yeah, I didn't mind it because sometimes when I get going on it, he's from the outside looking in and understanding what people might want to ask, so it's no big deal to interrupt me. Okay, we're going to talk about putting text on a path. First off, if you'll notice up here, how the screen is set up is for pixels. You can change it, and I showed this morning in millimeters, centimeters, inches. We use inches here. But if right now the toolbar across the top is not set at inches, we can come up here to File, Document Properties. We can change this default units over to inches. This morning we were changing them over to millimeters. You can change this to US letter 8.5 by 11, and you can change the custom size to inches. You can just close this out, and it'll change your toolbar to show inches instead of, and also all your other measurements across here into inches. In the international, they use more the metric system, so that would be more beneficial to them. So first off, we're going to come over here to our circle tool, I will call it. Click on it. If you hold down your control key when you're making this circle, it will make a circle and not an ellipse or an oval. So then we're going to come over here to our text tool, and we're going to click out, and I think you should use caps personally. It makes it more symmetrical if you use caps rather than, if we go back, we'll see if we don't use caps. And I didn't show this morning. There's an uneven portion across there if we want to put that in a space like a square. So I like to use caps.
Russell, you misspelled your own name. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, I saw that after I did it.
And we were all in the chat section trying to guess which name you were going to use, and I said he should use the name Mortimer.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been accused of using my name way too much. This morning I had to use Charles because he was complaining about it. So now that we have the name we're going to use, or the letters we're going to use, what we want to do is put this on the path. So we're going to go up here to our select tool, and then we're going to hold down the shift key. First off, let's get rid of this because I seen that there were problems this morning on the screen if we kept something like this around. Charles knows what I'm talking about. But and hold down, select our, and hold down the shift key and select our circle. Then we come up here to text and put on path. Now, Inkscape, for some reason, has an inherent, it always kind of like drops it down to the bottom. I don't know why. But if we click off, left mouse key off to the side, select our circle, then we can come over here to this rotate section 90 degrees. We can rotate it around and bring it up toward the top. Now what we want to do is click off to the side, and then we want to double click onto our text. And you'll notice our cursor popped up out here in the middle. You should be able to, let's zoom in on this, you should be able to see it flashing. Now if you use your left arrow key and right arrow key, you can move the cursor. What we want to do is take this cursor back over in front of the R. If y'all can see that now, the cursor is flashing in front of the R. We want to hold down on an Alt key, alternate key, ALT on the keyboard, and with our right arrow key, we're going to shift this around the outside perimeter of our circle where we feel that it's centered. Notice your little dotted line box. You can kind of use that for judgment. Also, there's another way. If you take your cursor to the top and bring down this guideline, you can lower it down to one or the other letters and see if the little blue guideline that's out here, you can see how well you've got it aligned to the top of the circle. So now we have it onto our path at the top of the circle. Then you say, well, I want to put it on the inside of the circle. You can click onto your circle and then click flip selected objects vertically, and that will put it in the inside of your circle on the bottom. And then we'll notice that the spacing is not quite good. They're all kind of like jumbled together. And what we can do is double click once again, and we have our cursor that's flashing in the center of the S's. We can basically do the same thing we did before. Left arrow key over. Now we can hold down the Alt key and use the right arrow key to move the U over. Now I want to release the right alternate key and go to the right arrow key and move it over a space. Alternate key down. Right arrow key. Move the S over. Release. Arrow over. Alternate key down. Release. Alternate key down. And just work my way around in between each one of these letters to move them out to what I feel is what I want spaced. Now if you say it's a little bit to the right, use your left arrow key to back it around to the beginning, which is the R. Hold the alternate key down and then left arrow key, and you can slide this to the left around the circle. Right arrow key to the right around the circle until you get it to the path that you want. So once we have that done, let's get rid of this guide. We click on it, it'll turn red, and we can actually hit delete and remove it. Next thing we're going to do is to take a text and put it on a path that is a line segment, so to speak. So just highlight this and get it out of our way. So we come over to Bezier, however you want to pronounce it, and we click and draw a line segment over. Now if we click just one time, we'll notice that we get this little bar out here. We don't want that. We want to stop it because what that is wanting to do is to draw keep drawing continuously till we get back to the front, but we don't want that at this point. So we just click and then come up to a point, and then we double click, and that creates us a line segment. We want to come up to our Edit Path To tool or Shape tool, and if we highlight this whole thing, which selects both of these nodes, we can come up here to Insert a New Node, the little positive on the left top side, insert a new node and click, and that will put a node in the center between these two nodes. And then if we want to come over and hit Make Selected Nodes Symmetrical, so that when we come over here and highlight, click off and highlight just the center node, now we can pull down on that node and we can move it in any direction or shape we want. So we'll just make a nice little arc. Then we come over to our text tool. Since I've been hogging my name so much, I'll use somebody else's. I hope everybody's still here. Are you still here, Charlie?
No, I left. I got a little bored.
They got awful quiet. I thought it was by myself. Hold down the Shift key. Or no, take that back. Hold down the Shift key. Come to Path. Or Text. Sorry. Text. Put on Path. So this has now placed it on our path. We can change this without any problems. Come back and select our Edit Path key. Click on our line segment. Come back to our middle node. Now we can change this in any direction, shape, or form we want. If we know this little handlebars here on the end, there's one over here and one over here. The node is square. On the ends of the handlebar, they are round. We can make this as a twist. Create whatever shape we want. And then once again, if we come back and we double click on our text, now we have our cursor back into the text. Use our left arrow key to bring it back to the C. We'll notice that this is kind of like jumbled up. Hold our Alt key down with our right arrow key. We can shift this right on around. I'm just moving this with my right arrow key. Once I get it to the letter I want to move, hold down the Alt key and I can shift these right on around to line them up as I want. And that will put our text on the path, and you would say, well, I have this little line sticking out here. It's no problem, just come down and select on the line. And we should be able to come over here and right key. Well, for some reason it's not wanting me to do it. There we go. Down here over this is our color bar. We have red, various shapes of gray to black, white. The X in the on the far left is actually nothing. In other words, invisible. There's no color to it. And so what I did was right click and hit set stroke as invisible, so that removed the line, so we don't have the line there anymore. This would be helpful if you wanted to make it cut this out on a pattern. So let me go back before I do that and change. I'm going to highlight this text and change it from Cooper Black before I get told that I'm leaving floaters. We're going to change it to stencil. This is helpful because if I want to come up here and take and create this square, all I did was create the square with a square tool over here, or a rectangle. That's a rectangle, not a square. I'm sorry. And then I want to put this Charlie into the rectangle.
Leave out the flowers, please.
Yeah, we want to put flowers around his name. But put it where I want there, and then hold. We're going to have to move this to the back.
Now it looks like you've got the corners rounded on that square. How did you do that?
Actually, that's pretty easy. If you select over here to your shape tool, or I say shape tool, it's edit paths by node tool, the one underneath the arrow tool or the pick tool, I will call it. You get these two little circles here. They're going to be somewhere on the rectangle, and you can drag these circles around the rectangle to make it the corners either square or oval, rounded. So you can change either one of these either way you want it. If you want it square, you just bring them back over to the corner. If I want to select one and pull it down, it will change it to the rounded corner. So that's how you would do that, red rounded corners. Now, once when we create things, are on different levels. The first thing you create is going to be on the top. The second thing you create is going to be the next level down. The third thing you create goes on and on and on. So if we check this right now or select it, we'll notice this. I'm only selecting this, and I can't select the letters in the back because they're on the back. So what I want to do at this point is, since the rectangle is larger than the text that I have on there, I'm going to move this, and this is lower section to bottom end, and each one of these showing little pages. If you will look, they show pages. I'm going to lower this to the bottom end. So then now when I select the letters or the name, Charlie, it's on the top, and the rectangle has been moved to the back. So we select Charlie, hold down the shift key, select the rectangle, come up here to path, exclusion, and now we've actually cut that name into our rectangle so that we can use this as a pattern to cut. Now remember, this is still can be edited. If you clicked on your edit paths, you can come over here and click, and we still have all these nodes that we can edit this if we want to in any way, shape, or form. We still make changes at this point, whatever you want to do. Or if you want to come in here and put pretty little flowers around Charles's name, you can. That's what I was talking about doing this morning. I believe this is going to be difference. Yeah. Now all I did was create a circle, into this rectangle. Come back up here to my selection tool or pick tool. It's automatically highlighted. Hold down my shift key. Select the back box. Come up here to path. And come down here to difference, and it just kind of like a cookie cutter is the way to explain it. Cut a hole in this rectangle because once again, if we go back to our edit path tool, we'll notice that these are now as nodes are applied, and we can change the direction of these nodes. Go at little handlebars here. We can manipulate these nodes in any way we want to. So now if we decided that this is what I want to have to cut out, naturally the dark area is going to be the board, and the white area are the areas we're going to cut out.
That's not a very pretty flower, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I didn't go to Art 101.
That one fell to the ground and he stepped on it.
Yeah. But that's basically the way that you can create, put text on the path. That's put it on an arc or on a circle, and then you can use it to create a pattern, however you want to do it. So, any questions?
Well, we do have one from the Q&A section. Wants to know where are you in Florida?
I am in Central Florida, and a little outside of a little town called Mulberry.
Tom Watson wanted to know that.
It's south of Lakeland, Florida. Not very. I mean, I can be in Lakeland in 15-20 minutes. Downtown Lakeland, 15-20 minutes. So I'm not too. But if you want to know where Lakeland is, if you know where Orlando, which is Disney World, and you know where Tampa is, which is the I-4 corridor, I'm in between in Lakeland.
Well, alrighty then. Thank you for that question, Tom. Is there anybody on the panel that has any kind of questions? And cue the crickets. Alrighty, we've now gone almost 2 hours.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I'm that long-winded?
Well, we just, you know, it's so dang fun. And I say this every week. Well, we have 22 viewers. Anytime we have 15 to 20 some odd viewers, I hate to end the show. Dang it. But people unfortunately have lives, and they gotta, you know, eat and sleep and stuff.
I'd like to say one thing before I know we're coming to a close or whatever, but I'd like to thank Rick for doing those tutorials on inlays. I mean, we discovered a little while ago that's very good to do those type of videos, and you can share them online. So I really want to thank Rick for doing that. That was, hey, thumbs up. I learned something tonight too.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rick, because and there again, the video idea is a good one because you're not having to wing it. You have a chance to prep your video and how you want to do it and how you want to present it. The only drawback for anybody that doesn't know is you have to narrate it because the timing is usually off if you try to just play it from YouTube. But thank you very much. A round of applause from everybody, if you don't mind, for Rick for doing an inlay tutorial. We have an applause sound effect, but it's like 5 seconds off, and I didn't want it to interrupt us because we're all talking all over the place. So thank you very much, Rick. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing, sir?
Nope, I'm fine. Thank you.
Alrighty then. Does anybody on the panel have any questions, comments that are nice? That leaves Mark out. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or any viewers? Or is there anything you'd like to see on our future show? Anything. Patrick Murphy says, thank you for another awesome show. Sharing the techniques gives us newbies confidence to try new things. Thank you, Patrick. That's why we started the show. And boom, 2 more shot up. Thanks everyone for your inputs, tutorials, excuse me. this old bird's going to get some sleep. Matt from V8 or Matt V8 says that, and Bob Rawson says thank you, Rick. Going to give that a try, and y'all are all welcome, and thank you all for watching. And as soon as I get all these, Tom Watson says he's in Bellevue.
I know where Bellevue's at. That's not very far from me.
Hi, y'all need to connect. Exchange phone numbers, and the rest of it don't tell us about, okay? I'm just kidding. That's another great show, guys. Thank you very much, Mr. Just In Case. Well, by golly, we still have 23 viewers, and they don't want to say anything else because they don't love us. I'm just kidding. But everybody, you're welcome to unmute yourselves. And boy, one just dropped off like a fly. I don't know if Donald's ever been with us. Well, thank you, John. Matt V8 says maybe try Intarsia sometime. I've been trying to get Intarsia people on here. It just hasn't happened yet. I really have, but I don't know. But thank you very much, John Cousins, for being on the show. Out of Grand Prairie, Canada, somewhere in there. You know, we'll just say Canada. John Shafter from New York. Mark Stallings from the pits of heck. I'm kidding. I don't remember where he's from.
Missouri.
Missouri. Alrighty then. I should know that because that's where my wife's from. And Rick Hutcheson from Iowa. Russell Claridy from Florida. Me from the best country in the world, Texas. Yes, Texas is its own country, by God. And Stevie Rogers said, thank you all for your time and contributions. You're welcome, sir. And I'd like to think they say the same thing. And that was Matt V8 that wanted the Intarsia, and DWSSR says thank you everyone, a great show, and thank you all for watching. Thank you everybody for watching. But I'm going to leave you with, y'all know what I usually say, but I'm going to throw in a new one I started this morning. Number one, don't scroll naked, okay? Because that's just stupid, and things can happen. Anyway, I won't go any further into that, but y'all remember, okay? Just scroll on.